Hello, Professor Strickland and my History 711 colleagues on this first day of spring. I'm Steve Shea. I may be the old man of the bunch, coming up on 61, so a little bit late to the program, but happy to be with you and speaking to you today from what I consider to be one of the most consequential churches in American history, and I think important to the discussion of defending Western freedoms, defending Western values and civilization. This is the Pohick Church. I'm sitting in the pew where George Mason would have sat with his family. His extended family would have been here. The pastor's family actually sat over there. George Mason, the author of the Bill of Rights, sat this way. Next to me would be the Fairfax family. Fairfax County is named after him, and his family owned all of what today we call Northern Virginia, out well into West Virginia, to the Ohio, up to Pennsylvania. That was all originally from the property given to the Fairfax family. I come here because I've always been fascinated by this church. I grew up in this area as a military brat, had a German mother, so a lot of time spent in Europe as my dad was in the Army. I was in the Army for 22 years and spent a lot of time in Europe myself. Today, drive past this church every day, and intrigued by what Lee Massey, who would have been the pastor preaching at that time, what kind of messages would have inspired a man like Washington or George Mason to fight, to write and demand the freedoms as Englishmen that they earnestly desired. I come to you also with two books that I keep on my desk at all times. One is Die Heilige Schriften. I do speak some German, so I try to maintain some proficiency there. This is Martin Luther's, of course, his translation, and the King James Bible, which would have been preached from that pulpit back in the 70s when this was built in 1774. This was the second building that was built. In talking about the development of our Western freedoms, they are to me indelibly linked to these two books. The printing press and the translation of the Bible was to me what brought Western Europe out of the dark ages that it had been in. And then Tyndale's translation, which would play such a huge role in the creation of the King James, would, as he desired, it would enable the plowman to have a knowledge of the Bible that would exceed that of the Pope. And to take this love of God and the Bible and to use these nations to spread, particularly the British, to spread the gospel around the world is, I think, really a story of how God works in nations. And we see that today in our country and the missionaries that we've sent forth. But the thing that I always use as a cautionary note, this church did not always look this way. This church in the Civil War was unfortunately taken by a regiment called the 2nd Michigan Volunteers, who were, by their own officers, men described as having no fear of God and no respect for houses of worship. And they came in here, they tore out all of the pews that were here, used them for firewood, took out any ornaments that they could. They tore the roof off. But 2 months later, when another unit came in behind them, the walls were blackened, everything was gone. The Daughters of the American Revolution came in after the war to try to resuscitate the church, and it was finally rebuilt in 1917. It's still an active church today, but it is a reminder that in what was done here in 2 months, there is an army today that is going through our churches, our schools, our colleges, our institutions, the military I love, and they are stripping away those things that we hold value, that hold us together in our Western freedoms that accompany that. And I am delighted to be able to not only study the development of these freedoms, but also to learn through a college that takes pride in anchoring its classical education to the Bible and defending those things and passing that along. It's a passion of mine. I look forward to the course ahead and discussing things with you through these videos and through the discussions online. And I look forward to the readings ahead, and I'm glad to have been able to make an introduction. Thank you very much.